2020 was a difficult year for a lot of people who often had to spend a lot of time at home. In a time like this, it seems interest in books, films, series, YouTube videos and especially video games increased. I read video game related sales are up by 27%. Looks like people had some time to play games. As it is tradition, let me show you my games of the year 2020 and explain why I chose them. In addition, some honorable mentions and my, I guess, again controversial disappointment of the year. Let me start with games I missed, so have not played yet but still want to. In some cases I have already bought the game but had no time to play it. There are some lesser known games among them, but let's start with an obvious one. When the indie studio Supergiant Games brings out a new game, the ears of a lot of people in the games industry and of players around the world perk up, like a little rabbit hearing something in the distance. The makers of games like Bastion, Transistor and Pyre have yet to release a not critically acclaimed game. With Hades, they continue their streak. In its core, it's just a solid roguelite, but its unusual style, setting and masterful execution makes it stand out. It's on many Game of the Year lists and I'm very interested in playing it too. I even bought it already. What makes Supergiant Games outstanding are often four things. An outstanding and very unique art style, very stylized narration or dialogues, interesting gameplay and a very polished game. These fuse together into excellent and outstanding games that are also not full price. You watch a trailer and just know, yes, that must be a game by Supergiant Games. Then you see how much they want for it and it's usually a must buy if you like what you see. It's a true indie studio because they published most of the games themselves and they have seen a lot of success with it. I think with Hades this year they cement their position further as one of the best indie developers of our time. If you have played Hades, let me know in the comments how you liked it so far. I recently played it for half an hour in my first impressions show that I live streamed, and even only after playing it a tiny bit, I can already see why it's so popular. It plays fantastic, controls are great and gameplay has cool ideas, which offer different playstyles depending on what you skill and what items you get. I had trouble putting it down after half an hour. It might not look that interesting watching it on stream, but I understand the positivity it got. If I had played it last year, I heavily assume it would have been on my top list, maybe on top of it. Full recommendation. Another game that came out 2020 that I already bought but haven't played yet is Desperados III. It's a real-time tactics game. Some might know Commandos. It's basically that, just in a Western setting. And I'm a huge fan of some Western films. Once Upon a Time in the West and The Good, the Bad and the Ugly are among my favorite films of all time. What makes this game in addition unusual for me is that it was developed by the German developer studio Mimimi Games, which is a really funny name if you see the logo. It's published by THQ Nordic and is currently sitting on 97% recommendations out of over 4,000 Steam reviews, so it seems people enjoy it a lot. Germany's game developer scene is relatively small if you compare it to how beloved video games are in Germany. Only very few games are known internationally to a wider audience. For example, Anno, Crysis, Settlers, maybe Gothic, Deponia and Spec Ops The Line. It's nice to see more developers from Germany having some success. The critically acclaimed Shadow Tactics Blade of the Shogun was also developed by Mimimi Games, so they had experience in this genre already. I already played Desperados III for 30 minutes as part of the mentioned First Impressions show and I enjoyed it a lot too. I will definitely look further into it. From Germany, we jump south a bit to Vienna, the capital of Austria. There, Moon Studios developed Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Their first game, the Metroidvania Ori and the Blind Forest, already got a lot of praise, and the last title seems to improve the concept even further. I heard a lot of good things about it, and visually it looks absolutely stunning again. Just look at this. The animation work is just sick. Some might have seen trailers of it during Microsoft's press conferences in the past, and that is due to the high quality. It's published by Microsoft Studios, or Xbox Game Studios as it's called now, too, and as a result it's sadly not available on PlayStation, but you can buy it for PC and the Nintendo Switch. I also played it recently as part of my first impressions show on stream, and I could not put it down and played it for some hours. It also plays fantastic. I liked it so much that with Hades, this could have been Game of the Year for me. Fully recommendation. You like the art style, you like Metroidvanias, then if it can keep this level of quality throughout the whole game, it's a must buy, and reviews hint into this direction. I would even say seeing it on so few Games of the Year lists seems a bit criminal. Another game I sadly had not the chance of playing yet is Noita by the Finnish developer Nolla Games. It's a pixel art roguelite dungeon crawler where every pixel is physically simulated, allowing many interesting interactions with the world, which in the trailers look really impressive. Reviews looked very promising, and the developer behind the innovative and fantastic Baba Is You from 2019 worked on it too. Originally, Cyberpunk 2077 should release in April 2020, but it was moved. Instead, another game in a Cyberpunk setting released in April, Cloudpunk. Here you are working for a delivery service and experience a little Cyberpunk story. Game looks great and reviews seem positive too, so it has my interest. Another little game I got a ton of recommendations for is There Is No Game Wrong Dimension. I have not played it yet, but it got a lot of praise. It's a point-and-click adventure with great humor and a unique idea behind it, so I was told. Might be a little surprise. Same with 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, but that is probably not my kind of game, just wanted to mention it. Now, before we look into my top 3 games of the year 2020, I want to hint at my disappointment of 2020. I know a lot of people really enjoyed it, and for some it's also Game of the Year, but I disliked it a lot. Those who have seen my streams can predict this easily. My disappointment of the year 2020 is Final Fantasy VII Remake. I also wrote a long explanation why, but it got so long that I made it into a separate video, which I will link here as card in the description and in the comments. All of it was originally part of this video though. So let's move to my third contender for Game of the Year 2020. Some might have forgotten about it, but the Resident Evil 3 Remake released 3rd of April 2020 with a mixed reception. I did not buy the game on release because I was busy with Final Fantasy VII and then the remake, and waited some time until I bought it. A common criticism was the short playing time of only around 6 hours. For a full price game, that is really short, and I 100% agree with this criticism. But if you can get it cheap in a sale with like 50% off or more, things start to look different in my opinion. I really enjoyed the Resident Evil 2 remake from 2019. It was among my top 3 games of 2019 and I think a close second place. And the original game from 1998 is also my favorite part of the classic Resident Evil series. I really appreciate the late 90s cheesiness of it and playing in a zombie-infested city, and this museum-like police station having all these weird riddles and a secret underground laboratory. The third game, and as a result its remake from 2020, goes again into a similar direction. More of the same with some tweaks and strange design decisions. The remake is looking very similar to the Resident Evil 2 remake, using assets of the other game and the same engine, etc. I guess reusing elements from the last remake made it possible to create the game in a relatively short time. It came out 1 year later and was made by a different team, but was also in development for 3 years. To justify the full price, they also added this multiplayer game called Resident Evil Resistance to it, which is maybe a cool idea and could be fun with friends, but has technical problems according to the reviews. I never tried it, and who is playing Resident Evil for a tacked-on multiplayer game anyway? Still, I have to admit I had a lot of fun with the Resident Evil 3 remake. I know several locations of the original are missing completely, like the Dead Factory, the Clock Tower, the park, which is a shame. Some dialogues are really cheesy, but that is part of the charm, and they also spiced up a few things, for example the railgun scene close to the end. I can see how lovers of the original game are not happy about the missing areas, but I think they still condensed it quite well, and Resident Evil 3 was also not free from criticism, especially from the 2020 perspective. I think condensing the game was not a bad idea, but maybe they overdid it a bit and should have just cleaned up the areas. In a way, it feels a bit inconsequential in comparison to the fantastic Resident Evil 2 remake, which manages to evolve the original formula and structure of the game in a way that it feels like how you remember the original game, even though you know it's different in many areas. The remake of 3 feels less like that. It added elements or sequences that were not in the original and cut out other elements to condense the original further. While the condensing works out in total, it feels weird to buy a full-price game that has less content than the original. Instead of transforming and evolving those missing areas, they just cut them out, and in this we see less value, especially if it makes the game only 6 hours long. As a result, the remake feels underdeveloped, and players then start to speculate if this is due to developers not having enough development time to complete their vision. We don't know. Still, condensing the game was not a bad idea, and there also lies some irony behind it if we look back into the development of the original game. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis from 1999 was planned to be not part 3 but a spin-off. Shinji Mikami, the director of Resident Evil 1, and Hideki Kamiya, who was the director of Resident Evil 2, basically worked on the next-gen Resident Evil games for PlayStation 2. Capcom decided to quickly develop another little spin-off Resident Evil title for PlayStation 1 to defend the brand against the pressure of other companies in the survival horror genre like Silent Hill and Parasite Eve. They felt the need to publish another game because it was hard to predict how long Resident Evil 3 was still away, so they put together a very small team with a very small budget and developed what was called Resident Evil 1.9 as a shorter experimental spin-off, like a Resident Evil indie version. It used the engine and elements from Resident Evil 2, and developers had some cool ideas like improving on the Tyrant or Mr. X that would show up a few times in the second game, as a result creating Nemesis for the third one, or the life selection, which presented the player with a choice like run into the basement or hide inside the kitchen, that depending on player's choice changed some minor details of the game. This was mainly implemented to bring the much shorter spin-off game some replayability. It was also playing in Raccoon City before and a bit after the events of Resident Evil 2, so basically in parallel, which also allowed to place some Easter eggs for veteran players. Long story short, I will link you an interesting article in the description explaining all this in more detail. It was decided that the spin-off should become Resident Evil 3, and what was planned as Resident Evil 3 should become Resident Evil 4, and was developed by Hideki Kamiya. Interestingly, Kamiya's game was so different that it became a new franchise called Devil May Cry, while Shinji Mikami later made the actual Resident Evil 4 that released 2005, so much later. Resident Evil 4 also ran through many iterations. In the meantime, Mikami made Resident Evil Code Veronica for Sega. In the last 2 months of development of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, it was also requested to make the game a bit longer to function better as a mainline Resident Evil, and so some rooms and even entire areas were added in this short amount of time. Those areas were the Dead Factory and the Raccoon City Park. The game originally ended at the Clock Tower. It seems for the remake from 2020 they removed those tagged on areas again and moved the ending into a secret lab called Nest 2, accessed from the hospital, which also makes sense. In the end, also Resident Evil 3 Nemesis was a shorter game due to its original nature as a short spin-off, the low budget and the team size. In a sense, the remake stayed somewhat true to its origin, both closely tied to Resident Evil 2, the original to the original, the remake to the remake. Overall, I had a fun time with Resident Evil 3 Remake. One reason was for sure because, in a way, we returned to Raccoon City and the fantastic Resident Evil 2, which I enjoyed a lot. Here's my second contender for Game of the Year 2020. This won't be a surprise if you followed my Twitch streams last year. Royale 4, a game that started with some issues, got some more issues with patches, which over the time could be ironed out with further patches. I still enjoyed it a lot. I have almost 200 hours in this game and I made a lengthy review about it already, so I won't go into the same detail as the other games, just see the review. I know Royale 4 is not perfect, but I really had a blast playing it. It's a relaxing and fun trading simulation in a very nice setting. I really enjoy the Caribbean flair, planning trade routes and businesses, growing cities, building a fleet and so on. I also enjoyed the combat, which they improved a bit in patches too. I guess not all people like turn-based combat, but I thought it was fun. For me, it was a game to relax and might not be for everyone, but I think the only game I played more last year was Soul Calibur 6. And finally, here's my Game of the Year 2020, Ghostrunner. I played the demo during the Steam Game Festival in summer 2020 and had a blast. The world was still expecting the other big game playing in a cyberpunk setting, and this game had the potential to fill the waiting time. It looked visually absolutely fantastic. It also supports ray tracing, but not via GeForce Now. The art style was amazing too, and it had very fun gameplay. It just controls so well. And from my perspective, its release in October 2020 delivered. It's basically 3D Hotline Miami in a cyberpunk setting where you play a cybernetic ninja. You move from level section to level section and usually kill all enemies, while getting hit once yourself means death. But you can restart the section as many times as you want. What makes this game outstanding is the flow and movement. Dying in one hit makes every move matter and generates an extreme intensity and often a great challenge, which makes you feel like you became the cybernetic ninja yourself. It draws you in, it just flows to a fantastic soundtrack fitting to the cyberpunk subgenre. I know for some people this game might be very frustrating, but there were only a few areas where I felt frustrated because the sections were too long. 99% of the time I had an absolute blast. I even replayed some levels to see how fast I can complete them. I also plan on replaying the whole thing at some point. It's like a game made for me and it's just so much fun. At some point you are like in a trance, flying through the air, cutting all enemies in half, seeing your countless retries coming to success. The first boss fight was also one of the most fun boss encounters I had in a long time. The others are not bad either, but this one stood out to me the most. I won't spoil it though. And it's just so simple. The game and level design offer you multiple options how to complete a level section. You find your own way and style, and the controls feel just spot on. It's of course a bit exhausting due to the very fast-paced nature of the game and you're pressing a lot of buttons, but it really is rewarding. To calm down a bit, they added these little riddle segments in between, where you can just catch your breath for a moment. Some didn't like those or found that they were unnecessary, but I appreciated them a lot, and for me, they did not feel out of place. It was a nice change of pace with some nice but easy riddles, which did not overstay their welcome in my opinion. Usually, these sections are also not very long and you get new abilities in them, so you look forward using them from now on. There are also some secrets and a ton of references to discover. I had fun getting those. For example, we find a person with a chicken head, which could be a visual wordplay referencing Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, a proto-cyberpunk novel that I really like. See my video about the origins of the subgenre cyberpunk. There's not much to say beyond that without spoiling too much. It's just a very tense and fun game that I enjoyed a ton, with fantastic music and gameplay, with great controls in a setting I really like. I enjoyed it so much that it's my Game of the Year 2020. Hopefully 2021 will be a better year outside of gaming and also have a ton of great games for us, even though we might spend less time at home if the circumstances of the pandemic will allow that. In the meantime, maybe check some of the games we talked about here, or let me know in the comments what your games of 2020 were. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Check the Final Fantasy VII Remake critique video, which was originally part of this video too, but it got too long, so I made it its own video. As mentioned, in the background I'm working on a Tolkien related video about Elrond, and also a little lore video for Tolkien Reading Day, which is at the 25th of March 2021. It's again a collaboration between a lot of YouTube lore channels, and there will be a big playlist again. I also plan to release the Elrond video before Tolkien Reading Day, but not 100% sure if I will manage that. If not, the Tolkien Reading Day video would simply release first and then the Elrond video is next. Don't wonder about the release order. In addition, my new podcast called Of Games and Rings was just revealed last week. Depending on the guests, we talk about games or Tolkien or both. The first episode with Pawns and Voice of Geekdom is already available, and depending on when this video releases, the second episode with Men of the West and Nerd of the Rings as guests could be already available on my YouTube channel too. If not, it will release soon. The podcast episodes are also on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts and Podbean. I also live stream the recording of the podcast on twitch.tv, and there's a VOD of the recording too. In addition, I also stream there about 2 times a week, Thursdays and Sundays, and we are still playing through Cyberpunk 2077, very slowly, but we are close to the end. Sorry for this information flood, but right now I simply produced a ton of content. If you liked this video, feel free to press the like button, recommend me further, and maybe leave a comment about your games of 2020 or what games you're looking forward to in 2021. In case you are still listening and want to subscribe, consider pressing the annoying bell. Thank you for watching, all the best and goodbye.